श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। ओम श्री स्वामिने सच्चिदानंदेन्द्र सरस्वत्यै नमः. Yes, on one hand, we have this evening an interesting topic to quote and unquote. On the other, this topic is a little intriguing and controversial too. The nature of avidya is a matter on which lot of dust has arisen on the ground, above the ground, so to say, in scholarly circles. And my attempt this evening is to share with you what I have very deeply and sincerely appreciated in the last 3 or 4 years, in contrast to certain notions that I had before, which I do not totally dismiss as wrong. Who am I to take such a stand on mighty scholars who had proposed that view on avidya? However, in all humility, I wish to state that of late I very much appreciate the position about the nature of avidya as presented by Pujya Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati, popularly known as the Hole Narasipura Swamiji. He wrote a book in 1920, Mula Vidya Nirasaha, which means the dismissal of the original or the causal ignorance. And he brought forward a whole lot of arguments to say that avidya, which is loosely called spiritual ignorance, is not really the cause of this creation. It doesn't have an existence of that kind. You cannot say that, well, there is Brahman, and upon that Brahman there is something called avidya, and that gives rise to certain confusion called adhyasa, mutual superimposition. So when people say avidya is, in Sanskrit we call it bhava rupa. In Sanskrit, when you want to say something is, mainly two verbal roots are used. One is asti, and another, a synonym really, is bhavati. Asti and bhavati both imply to be, something is. So the popular, I call it the widespread school of Advaita, maintains there is avidya. Though after saying that, they say a lot of other things, such as we cannot say it is, we cannot say it is not, we cannot say it has parts, we cannot say it has no parts. And in the Viveka Chudamani, there is that kind of shloka. Sannapya sanno ubayatmikano, bhinnapya bhinno ubayatmikano, sangapya nanga ubayatmikano. It is neither in parts nor one whole. It neither is broken nor is unbroken. So they make such statements, but primarily the exponents or the followers or the teachers of the widespread Advaita school maintain that there is avidya, it then gives rise to what is called adhyasa. They make a division between avidya and adhyasa. Some of you surely have studied, if not studied, have heard something about the celebrated Adhyasa Bhashya of Adi Shankaracharya as a prelude to actual commentary on the 555 sutras in the Brahma Sutras. Sri Shankaracharya presents a short piece which has been applauded as a great classic in philosophical writing. And that short prelude is called Adhyasa Bhashya. And Adhyasa, which can be translated as mutual superimposition, is a certain confusion that exists between spirit and matter. And with regard to, for example, our own existence, are we spirit, Chaitanya, or are we matter, Jada? We are at a loss to pinpoint what we are because we are so identified with this body, with the indriyas, with the mind, all of which are matter. Even the manas, the mind, is matter, sukshma prakriti. Sharira, this body, is stula prakriti. Now, we think, from the head till the toes, it is we are this. And then also very much accept that we are of the nature of consciousness, Chetana. And the qualities of Chetana are superimposed on the body. We say, my eyes see. Oh, how did eyes get the power, capacity to see, is the question. The eyes are matter. How can matter see? So that quality or attribute of being able to see is drawn from Chaitanya, the spirit, the pure self. And so is the case with the mind, with the organs of action, and so on. They seem to borrow from the spirit. And the spirit, which you and I are, has no shape, no form, but you and I, time and again, consider ourselves as having a certain form. Every time we stand before a mirror or in an online lecture like this, a speaker like me adjusts everything and ensures that his face is clearly seen to the audience. He ensures that he is not neither too low on the screen nor too high so that you people see my chest. I ensure that you see me, properly, so that the experience of attending such a lecture is pleasant and educative as well as delightful. So we have this idea, I have this form. I'm tall, I'm short, I'm dark, I'm fair, etc. How can I, the pure self, have all these attributes? Well, somehow there seems to be all these attributes, so therefore we call it superimposed. The attributes of matter are superimposed on the spirit and the attributes of the spirit are superimposed on the matter, therefore Adi Shankara calls it Anyonya Adhyasa. And in my presentation this evening, where I have 4 or 5 slides for you to see, I am going to say that the position of Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati, who did extensive work in a long life of some 95 years, who did unbelievable amount of precise translation of the works of Adi Shankaracharya especially, not to mention many other things of which also he translated. and it's a Himalayan task to translate into very accurate Kannada with some footnotes, with some tips here and there, to translate just the commentary by Shankara on, let us say, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It can be a life's task, a lifelong task. But Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati actually translated all Brahma Sutra Bhashya, entire Brihadaranyaka Upanishad Bhashya, Chandogya Upanishad Bhashya, and then the shorter Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, in such Kannada that those of us here knowing Kannada would have their eyebrows going up, because its precision and then very good clear comments explaining parts which otherwise would go above somebody's head is amazing. So without talking much about him, his position is avidya is not other than adhyasa. Avidya itself is adhyasa, adhyasa itself is avidya. Whereas the widespread school of Advaita Vedanta, who also claim to do justice to Adi Shankaracharya, maintain that avidya is the cause and adhyasa is the effect. Therefore, they have this idea, karana avidya, which itself is called Moola Avidya. On Brahman, there appears this avidya, which will eventually negate. But to begin with, they propose avidya. Whereas Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati ji says that there is nothing like avidya which is. There is Brahman and Brahman only, full stop. No other talk. But I see plurality. I see object. I see space and time. I see change. I see colors. I hear sounds. If anyone says, he says, there is this erroneous perception, and without giving a sense of reality to it, we may say that erroneous perception itself is avidya. In Sanskrit, right seeing is called samyak darshana. Samyak means rightly. If you say something rightly, I would compliment you, samyak uktam, samichinam uktam. You said it so well. Or if somebody prepares a good cup of tea, we would say samyak kritam, made well. Samyak darshanam is right seeing. Now, asamyak darshanam, erroneous seeing, itself is avidya. Erroneous seeing doesn't arise from avidya. This is the distinction that is made. And it, to many people, may seem as not a big deal. But it is indeed a big deal, because on grosser levels, a lot of people misunderstand Advaita Vedanta as saying, look at these people. They say that Supreme Brahman, that infinite, pure Brahman, comes under the grip of avidya. Sri Ramanujacharya and others write in the beginning of their great, all-time great works, Vedartha Sangraha and so on, in their invocation shlokas, they criticize the Advaita Vedanta, though Sri Ramanujacharya doesn't propose a system which is far apart from Advaita. Vishishtadvaita comes pretty close to Advaita, but Sri Ramanujacharya does criticize the picture where that Supreme Brahman, alas, becomes this jiva because of something called ignorance. Alas, what a pity to say that Sriman Narayana, because of avidya, becomes this limited jivatma and roams about and seeks to regain his original nature. Oh, no, no, I can't accept this. Sri Mahavishnu, Sriman Narayana cannot, in that manner, become a jiva. So, this theory that ignorance makes Brahma into jiva is not acceptable, and so on. He objects and then places before his followers a different version of the Upanishadic teachings. Now, I neither will go into the details of how such a misrepresentation uh, could have been avoided in the mind of Sri Ramanujacharya if this Mula Vidya Nirasa had been made clear to him in the beginning. The Advaita teachers like Yadav Prakasha, who taught Sri Ramanujacharya, surely did not present Advaita in a proper way. Therefore, what Sri Ramanujacharya criticized was not pure Advaita Vedanta, but the Advaita Vedanta that was, presented to him. Many times in our life, we protest against something and then we realize that we protested against what we imagined to be the situation. The real situation could be different. Then we say, sorry, I misunderstood that such and such thing happened. So that is our view towards the commentaries of Sri Ramanujacharya and others, whom we very much revere. But alas, Yadav Prakasha, his Advaita Guru, did not present before him the correct picture of Advaita. And in the history, Yadav Prakasha eventually embraces Vishishtadvaita and abandons Advaita. Okay, that is history. Now, I neither will go into the details of how this correct presentation could have avoided Sri Ramanujacharya building another system altogether, nor am I capable of doing that. There are a lot of intriguing issues over there. I only have a rough idea about that. All right. So, this matter, whether avidya is the cause of this creation, it is the cause of that erroneous superimposition. Avidya is factor A and adhyasa, anyonya adhyasa, mutual superimposition is a factor B. Whether these are A and B or there are no such A and B, avidya itself is adhyasa, adhyasa itself of avidya is therefore a very important topic. So to share with you some of my bits and pieces of understanding about this whole matter, I shall now present a few simple slides. All of us are glad to join this event this evening under the banner of Meditation and Study Circle. And here is a talk on the nature of avidya with pranams to Adi Shankaracharya and with pranams to Swami Satchidanandendra Saraswati, whose version of what avidya is being attempted at presenting this evening. And what is the basic problem? About the basic problem, the different schools within the Advaita fold have no conflict or no difference of opinion. All agree. We have Adi Shankaracharya, and his commentaries were interpreted by a large number of teachers, including 3 of his 4 major disciples, excluding Sureshwara. So Sureshwara interpreted in one way, and Padmapada, Hastamalaka, and Totaka, and they, especially Padmapada, he was the one who wrote that Panchapadika and so on. And then Bhamati was written by Vachaspati Mishra and a whole lot of other great scholars. All of them took a direction which I have been calling in this talk itself from the beginning as the widespread philosophy, interpretation, and the same Adi Shankara was presented by Sureshwaracharya in his Naishkarmya Siddhi as well as in his Vartikas on Brihadaranyaka Bhashya, etc., in a different way. Now, most of the teachers do not recognize that Sureshwara had avoided a certain way of describing avidya. They think that Sureshwara also meant what they took finally the nature of avidya to be. But Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati points out Sureshwara did not make the mistake of according to avidya a status of being bhavarupa, as though it is. I'll come to that in the next slide. So, to begin with, all agree. The Upanishads have as their main aim the dismissal of avidya. On this, there is no difference of opinion. We are not talking about Dvaita, Vishishta Advaita now. We are talking of camps within Advaita Vedanta. Then the Upanishads are the Brahma Vidya. Upanishads are regarded as the highest science of the absolute final truth. And Vidya alone can eliminate avidya, not karma, not upasana, not some practice, some technique. It's only Vidya, right seeing, right understanding that can end avidya. All of them agree that when we are looking at avidya as though it belongs to this space-time continuum in which we find ourselves, avidya does not have an adi, beginning, or an end, anta. So, avidya in one sense can indeed be called anadi and ananta. And all of them agree. Let me call it the widespread school and the less known school. The less known school is of our own Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati. I called it our own because the majority of the audience this evening are from Bangalore, from Karnataka. And Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati spent most of his time traveling in Karnataka, speaking in Kannada, though he to some extent went to neighboring states and I think traveled to other places in the country to some extent. So, Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati School, let me call the less known school, where avidya is not considered karana or a mula vastu. It's not considered bhavarupa. So whether it is bhavarupa or not bhavarupa, all the schools agree that vidya brings avidya to an end. So within the domain of space and time, it appears to be endless. It can never end. But as some people use the word, you can transcend, not end, transcend. When you are dreaming, you may find that you are in the middle of an ocean and you are not able to see the boundary of the ocean in any direction. But then something happens and you wake up from your dream. Then not that you have found the shore, not that you have found the boundary of the ocean. You woke up and saw there is no ocean at all. So in that sense, avidya too can come to an end. And understanding Brahman alone dismisses avidya. Not only avidya, whatever follows avidya, such as kama, karma, desire, activity, endless activity, hoping to find completeness, hoping to come upon infinity one day. So that is karma. Kama, karma, and karma phala, and so on. They are called anarthas. And they are called anartha parampara. And Vidya dismisses avidya. Moment avidya is dismissed, all these also are at once gone. This much everybody agrees. But now we come to the next point. Can we really call avidya bhavarupa, that it is? Brahman is, and then maybe in a whispering voice, there is avidya, that is the problem, that caused all this to come upon, all this to appear. Hold on, if you really say Brahma is one without a second, Brahma alone is, then you cannot say avidya is. Maybe there is some language problem. You use the verb is for Brahman as well as avidya. But if you think that avidya is, and the use of the word is on par with how you use it in the sentence Brahman is, that would be Advaita Hani, violation of the basic understanding of Advaita. The basic understanding of Advaita is Brahman alone is, full stop. If I wouldn't say this man misunderstands or that lady misunderstands, to use a careful language, I would say if there is an error in seeing, if there is a misunderstanding in seeing that Brahman alone is, then together with that erroneous seeing, there come about a whole domain of whole lot of falsehood. So that error in seeing will come to the question, who has this error and so on. That's a very fascinating question. In fact, this evening's topic is very intimately connected with an appreciation or understanding of that issue. Who has avidya? In this slide itself, at the bottom, I am mentioning that question. But to dwell on the second bullet a little while, error in seeing is avidya. There are no two realities. That is, if someone imagines, okay, there is Brahma, and because of avidya, there is this multiple or multivarious, multifarious or manifold, let me use that word. Another plane. We would say the right understanding of Advaita is there is one reality only, and the so-called other one is fake. The other one is false. The other one is a mere imagination. Questions do arise. Who imagines? For imagination to take place, there has to be somebody who imagines. We would humbly submit that that kind of seemingly clever argument actually arises from a deep-rooted conditioning. You are so used to this plurality, you are so used to cause and effect, you are so used to space and time, that in this matter also, you, without looking left or right, demand that there has to be a real entity which has to imagine all these names and forms and so on. In fact, this is the question, the Purvapakshi, that is the imagined opponent. In Bhashyas, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, in the commentaries on Gita, Upanishad, Brahma Sutra, etc., Adi Shankara, for example, writes explanations for every sutra, every mantra, every shloka. In order to convey certain points very well, he creates an opponent. That's why I'm calling it an imagined opponent. He creates somebody, a character, who objects to what is being proposed. So a question is raised, and the one who raises the question is called Purvapakshi. And then the commentator, like here Shankaracharya, very patiently answers those questions. So the character, as though within that setting, who answers the questions is called Siddhanti. So Purva Pakshi is an opponent created by the commentator, and Siddhanti is the one who defends the main Siddhanta or the school of thought. So in the 13th chapter, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, commenting on the second shloka, where Sri Krishna says, first shloka is Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramithyavidiyate Etadyo Veti Tat Kshetram. What's that? One moment. Etad Veti Tam Prahu, I think. Give me a few seconds. Etad Tam Prahu Kshetrajna iti tadvidaha. What is the second shloka? Kshetrajnam chapi maham viddhi, says Sri Krishna. We call it the bombshell of Advaita Vedanta. In the first shloka, Sri Krishna says there is Kshetra, for simplicity, let us call it matter, and Kshetrajna, the knower of the field, which is spirit. Spirit knows and the matter is known. Now, all of us tend to imagine, okay, that means in all of us, our bodies are the known and the spirit within us is the knower. The second shloka is a bombshell because Sri Krishna says, Kshetrajnam mam viddhi. Sri Krishna claims that he is the knower where? Maybe in his own body, or maybe in some devotee's body, some body of some selected people. No. Kshetrajnam chapi mam viddhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In the body of an ant, in the body of an elephant, in the body of a human being, in the body of a president of a country, in the body of a coolie on Bangalore's railway station. Everywhere, sarva kshetreshu mam eva kshetrajnam viddhi, says Sri Krishna. And Adi Shankara is into a long commentary on that. Wonderful, incisive statements are made. So over there, we have what I have quoted in the last bullet here. A question is raised by the Purva Pakshi that if this whole pluralistic universe is because of avidya, spiritual ignorance, or as we called it in the second bullet here, if it is because of an error in seeing, who on the earth has that error? Number one, multiple choice question, let's make it. For A, B, C, D. A is, well, who else? Brahman gets that error. Rama Rama, Shantam Papam. Brahma can never have error in it. Brahma is ever pure, Nitya Shuddha, Nitya Buddha, Nitya Mukta Swabhavam Brahma. Okay, so we say, okay, Brahman doesn't have error. This Jivatma, he or she has error. Now, if Brahman alone is, where did this Jivatma come from? Our basic position is Brahma alone is. Then we say, oh, wait a minute, don't be too smart. Not Brahma, not Jiva, because there is no Jiva. Brahma alone is. Oh, it's all in the mind. I have heard that every problem is finally in our own mind. Then the same question. When you say Advaita says Brahma and nothing other than Brahma is, what is this mind? How did it come flying from somewhere? Is it an unidentified flying object, UFO? This mind, this Antakarana? Now there is a serious problem. Therefore, in red letters at the bottom, we have written Sa avidya kasya iti. Is a question. If you use a strong, rash language, who the hell has this avidya? You may say, angrily. Well, let's avoid that bad word. Especially for a Swamiji like me, it's not good, I think, to use a bad word like that. Who has avidya? That is the question asked by Purva Pakshi, of course, as I explained before, created by Adi Shankara, the commentator himself. But in answer to it, Adi Shankara gives a statement which I tell you, I have been really enjoying the insight there for many years. In the last 3-4 years, ever since I began to understand Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati's commentary, my joy has increased to greater levels. Who has avidya? The answer is Yasya Drishyate Tasya Eva. Adi Shankara doesn't say Brahman has error or ignorance. Jivatma has avidya, Manas has avidya, Buddhi has avidya. No. He says, to slightly change the language, one who is asking the question has avidya. This is putting the ball back in your court. You serve a ball which comes towards me at highest speed, and I manage to put it across the net, and it is back in your court. As the idiom in English goes, the ball is back in your court. The questioner is dazed. Who has ignorance? Who has avidya? One who is asking the question, one who is doubting, or one who visualizes avidya, that entity has. Then what the result is? The Purva Pakshi is prone to ask, if you say the questioner has avidya, I am the questioner, I have asked you who has avidya, that means I have avidya. Who am I? If the Purva Pakshi asks the question, who am I? That is the $1 million question Ramana Maharshi promoted all his life. Ask yourself who you are. So apart from Ramana Maharshi or all the stuff, what happens is it brings out a beautiful insight. And the insight is there is an error domain, and if one wants to locate the error, and you say that we jivas, we individual souls have, this problem. This individual soul is part of that erroneous seeing. It's not that there is the individual out here and error hits him as though. My visualization is you go on an evening walk and it's winter and a cold breeze hits you. You come home and start sneezing. That night you don't sleep well. So it's not that there is a jivatma and error, avidya. Let me stick to the word avidya here onwards. Avidya as though hits that jivatma. That will lead to a serious problem, because you have to first make jivatma bhavarupa. Jivatma is. So there is no jivatma. Brahma alone is. So there is this wonderful proposition of asamyak darshana, and let me simplify it for you. In Advaita Vedanta's proposition that there is an avidya bhumi, there is an erroneous domain. I sometimes call it the frame of reference of avidya. So in that avidya bhumi, not only what is perceived is of questionable reality, the entity that questions, the entity that perceives, not only the elephant I see is of questionable reality, but I who get afraid, I who rub my eyes, is that a real elephant? I who tell my wife, look at this elephant, I think it's going wild and it may kill both of us. This I, the perceiver, and what is perceived together make the error domain. That's about it. And what is the job of the Upanishads here? Upanishads, with their revelations, give to us an insight in which, at one go, the perceived and the perceiver are seen to be not true, and Brahman alone is discovered to be true. Some of you may have heard that humorous story. I think it was Vasishta or Vedavyas, Vasishta maybe. Vasishta was giving a lecture and he took great pains to convey to the students how what we see, what we perceive is not the truth. And the students were wonderfully enjoying it. So true, so nice. Never before we had understood this Vedanta's, saying everything is mithya. Wow! It's that at that time a mad elephant came towards the classroom. Maybe it was an open air classroom. A mad elephant came and the Mahout shouted at the highest voice, "Oh, all of you students, oh, the teacher, run for life. This elephant I am unable to control." All the students, young men and women, got up and ran helter-skelter. And Vasishta also ran. After some time, luckily no one was hurt. Elephant went its way. All of them came back panting. Vasishta also came back panting. And Vasishta took his seat and said, "Come on, please sit down. Let us resume the class." They were about to restart the class. But one brahmacharini, one young lady, this is how I narrate, said, "Before we continue with any other discussion, I want to ask a question." Vasishta said, yes, what is it?" She said, "We are students, we are ignorant. So when the illusory elephant came, we ran for life, and that is understandable. You know how everything is mithya. And why did you run? Forgive me for asking this question. Don't think I am disrespectful, but with all due respect, wanting to learn, I ask you, revered sir, why did you run? You know the elephant was mithya." Vasishta, again taking breath, he said, "What a wonderful question. You are so right. I compliment you for asking this question. And let me answer that now. The elephant indeed was mithya. There was not a single moment when I did not see that it was mithya. But you know what? Mama palayanam api mithya asit. This teacher running also was illusory. Nobody ran, nobody sat, no elephant came, no elephant went, no students ran, no students came back, no teacher ran, no teacher came back. The elephant was mithya. Palayanam means running away, running for life. That is how the error domain is to be understood as the womb of many appearances. The same teacher was so calm explaining things, and later on running for life out of fear, as though at one breath Vasishta would say, the teacher who ran was an illusion. The teacher who spoke calmly was also an illusion. There is no teacher, no student, no division. In instruction, by way of instruction, we posit so many concepts. I am practically narrating what is said in a Mandukya Karika. Upadesha ayam vadaha gnate dvaitam na vidyate. So this statement, yasya drishyate tasya eva. Who has avidya? The one who is asking the question has avidya, has a tremendous bearing on right understanding of avidya. Now we take up a few more points. You and I find ourselves, therefore I put in the title itself, for the so-called you and me. Who actually are you and me? In a manner of saying, God knows. Who is giving the lecture at this moment? God knows. And who are listening to this online lecture? God knows. But the so-called you and me, the so-called I am giving a talk this evening on the nature of avidya. And from my I, so-called you, somebody in Bombay, somebody in Bangalore, somebody in Chennai, somebody in Timbuktu, all of you are listening to this lecture. It's all so-called. In North India, they use an expression, tathakatit. Tathakatit, so-called. In reality, all of us, as per Advaita Vedanta, are neither speakers nor listeners, neither healthy nor sick, neither millionaires nor poor. We are all Satchit. The intellect, now I'm quoting Ramana Maharshi once more, the intellect sees a hill, sees a river, sees a friend, sees a foe. The intellect recognizes the world, and the world is recognized. Ramana Maharshi in Saddarshanam, verse 7, says, have you noticed the intellect and the world rise together and vanish together in deep sleep? You don't have either the hill or the river, nor do you have you coated, booted, suited, or in a beautiful Kanjivaram sari and matching blouse. There is neither you in suit or in sari, nor the hill or the river that are perceived. Dhiya sahodeti dhiyastameti. Dhi means buddhi, intellect. Dhiya saha. With the intellect, the world arises. With the intellect, the world or the universe or the whole perceived domain subsides. Dhiya sahodeti dhiyastameti lokastato dhi pravibhasya eshaha dhi loka janma kshaya dhama purnam. He talks about the sadvastu. Sadvastu neither has the perceiving intellect, nor has loka, the perceived world. Ramana Maharshi walks hand in hand with Adi Shankaracharya. Unlike Shastris like me, Ramana Maharshi did not study the Shankara Bhashya. He did not go through all the books. He was not invited by my meditation and study circle to bamboozle his audience with impressive philosophical concepts. Venkatraman of Tiruchuli, at the age of 17, by the grace of Lord Arunachala, had an extraordinary insight that this pair, this jodi, as we call in Kannada, Hindi may be Hesha, jodi. What is seen and the limited one, not the infinite true I, the limited personality, the limited one that sees, and the world which is seen, are a pair, are a jodi that rise and subside. And as they rise and subside, actually the truth beneath them, behind them, below them, so to say, that is the only truth. Therefore, the error domain has a mutual dependence. The hill is a hill because you happen to have taken a role of being the personality with eyes and ears and so on. And you are the personality in relation to the hill and the river and the birds and the so on and so forth. Sapeksha, relative. Relative to drishya, the drashta gets an identity. Relative to the drashta, the drishya gets an identity. The truth of the whole matter is both drishya and drashta vanish into the truth. The error domain, therefore, is simply false. Therefore, immature understanding of Advaita Vedanta, after all the big books studied, many Advaita Vedantins, because they are not mature enough, they really think that the universe came, the universe got created, the universe arose, the universe came into being. Whereas mature Advaita Vedanta, as very explicit in Mandukya Karikans and so on, calls the whole stuff Ajata, never born. Jata means born. Ajata, unborn. Unborn. In Veda, in Mandukya Karikas, Karikas are the shlokas written by the grand guru of Shankaracharya, Sri Gaudapada, on the Mandukya Upanishad. And Gaudapada says, nothing arises, nothing subsides, nothing ever happens. This is the highest truth. Etat tad uttamam satyam yatra kinchin na jayate. There is a punchline. David Godman in Tiruvannamalai has been doing a lot of good work, wrote many books. Primarily, he is very devoted to Ramana Maharshi, but he also went for a few years to Lucknow and sat by the feet of, Punjaji. There was this revered Punjaji. And David Godman is a wonderful writer. He wrote a book on Punjaji, H.W.L. Punja, who was also called Papaji. And if I remember the words correctly, that book was called Nothing Ever Happened. That's the title of the book. Nothing ever happened. So that is there's an echo of Ajatavad. Now, Brahma alone is. Rest of it is play of the mind. And the mind is a part of the error. I'm not giving mind bhava. When we say avidya is not bhava rupa, the mind also is not bhava rupa. It's not that mind which has certain existence fancies all these which have no existence. Oh dear, mind itself has no existence. The substrate alone is. In another colloquial English language, there is no nothing. That's according to proper English. Either we say there is no thing whatsoever, or there is nothing. But there is a slang English, I think especially used by blacks in the United States. There is no nothing. Somebody says, today I have taken leave and I don't do nothing today. So that's a kind of language. Let's not get distracted by language. Brahma alone is. Etat tat uttamam satyam. So the spirit and matter within the error domain, avidya bhumi valage, spirit and matter are noticed to exist. Our own existence seems to be a confused blend. I have said this in the beginning. That is adhyasa. Our own existence seems to be a confused blend between the spirit, the self, and matter, the not self, anatma. This mutual identification is called adhyasa. This confusion is itself avidya. That is the position of Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati. Adhyasa itself is avidya. Therefore, to make just one more mention of Sri Ramanujacharya, if Sri Ramanujacharya had understood this way of seeing things, that we are not saying Narayana became limited. Narayana never became limited. Brahma never became Jiva. Brahma, even now, even at this moment as you and I are talking, Brahma is as free as ever. It will remain free. Therefore, Shantam Papam, who are we to say Mahavishnu became a miserable man on the road, wondering what he will do next day, where his next meal will come. There is no really change in Brahman. If that was made clear by Adava Prakasha, who taught Advaita Vedanta to Ramanuja, and Ramanuja rebelled against it. And in Orissa and Bengal, somewhere there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also first mastered Advaita Vedanta, mastered in quote and unquote, but surely he missed out something. And therefore he was very discontent. Then, lock, stock, and barrel, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dumped Advaita Vedanta on the ground and went for bhakti. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And let me say this, whether you follow Advaita or Dvaita or Vishishta Advaita, or for that matter, if you follow Dharma, right living, you will have powers, you will heal people, your touch will cure a leper, your presence will do wonders. And the world generally is carried away by miracles. So if somebody saw Madhvacharya doing a miracle, then they say whatever he says is the ultimate truth. Madhvacharya did miracles, Shankaracharya did miracles, Ramanujacharya did miracles, Satya Sai Baba did miracles, Shirdi Sai Baba did miracles. Miracles do not establish what the truth is. Those who do miracles and serve the society, cure the sick, bring the poor to have some higher standard of living, and various ways through miracles, if there are some people who bring succor, bring relief to people who are suffering, they are worthy of reverence. And no matter what philosophy we follow, we will rise to some unimaginable heights. Therefore, we should not, by that itself, get carried away. So, the confusion itself is avidya, the spirit and matter confusion. And therefore I made a reference. If this was understood properly, both Vishishtadvaita and Advaita would not have engaged in criticism of Advaita. Anyway, the right understanding says to us, the widespread misinterpretation that avidya is the cause, as though first of all there is avidya, then it causes all these things to come. And then with effort, by doing this, by doing that, that is all not true Vedanta. It's not by doing karma. It is not by visualization, upasana, but it is by seeing, samyak darshana, that avidya goes away. Where there is duality, there is this error avidya. This doesn't mean that avidya is the cause of creation. The last bullet I'm reading, the erroneous seeing, samyak darshana itself is avidya. Probably this is the last one. A few words on that. Sri Sachidanandendra Saraswati very ably and with tremendous intensity went about exploring this. In fact, during his early years, I don't know what age, I think he was in his 20s and 30s, he had a friend, a householder called Krishnaswamy Iyer. This Krishnaswamy Iyer, in Bangalore only, in Karnataka, this Krishnaswamy Iyer used to have discussions with this Subramanya Sharma. Subramanya Sharma later became Swami Sachidanandendra Saraswati. So Krishnaswamy Iyer used to say to Subramanya Sharma, if you closely examine, Adi Shankara never said avidya is bhavarupa. And a lot of these ideas Krishnaswamy Iyer discussed. Then with much more Sanskrit knowledge and much more time available, much more passion and intensity, this L. Subramanya Sharma, L not L, L Ambalase, Y Subramanya Sharma. He went headlong into this matter, examined all the Upanishads and the commentaries and amazing intellect. And he found, I am sharing one point and then I'll conclude. In Brahma Sutra Bhashya by Adi Shankaracharya, a word is used, Mithyajnana. And the widespread bunch of schools of thought split it as Mithya plus Ajnana. So they made Ajnana synonymous with Avidya as the cause of a lot of trouble. Whereas Sachidanandendra Saraswati says, Mithya-jnana, the word should not be split as Mithya plus Ajnana, grammatically correct, but by context is not right. It is Mithya-jnana. What is the difference? Mithya-jnana, erroneous understanding. Erroneous perception is cause of everything. Not some Ajnana which has the status of being somewhere. That is not the cause. So, Mithya Ajnana, that splitting, that Sandhi splitting led to the confusion. And therefore, a whole lot of, including Swami Vidyaranya and so on. And many of the works like Viveka Chudamani also refer to Avidya as though it is, it's Bhavarupa, as though it is the cause of this creation and so on. And then they make some other statements which sort of go back to, etc. Swami Sachidananda Saraswati is of the view that in the light of some of those verses positing or proposing that wrong understanding, Viveka Chudamani quite possibly was not by Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankara would not write this and so on. Though Swami Sachidananda Saraswati took great pains even to translate many of those works which have this erroneous interpretation of Avidya. He took pains and he would write a tippani, a footnote. This shloka is not really in line with Shankara Bhashya. That makes me conclude that this work is attributed to Adi Shankara, but it's not written by Adi Shankara, etc. He has written footnotes. He doesn't disturb the original. If he has a different view, very honestly, great intellectual honesty, he writes a footnote. If it is Mithya plus Ajnana, then it accords Avidya a special status of being Bhavarupa, as though Avidya is. There is Brahma, there is Avidya. Whereas the latter, the second interpretation, denies any special status to Avidya. Avidya itself is erroneous. Avidya is itself erroneous seeing. It itself is Adhyasa. Therefore, this two-layered picture, there is Avidya, then Adhyasa comes from it. In Adhyasa, all this creation takes place. It's a problem. So these are some of the aspects that I wanted to share with you. I pause here and welcome questions or comments by any of you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.